I want to thank our reader, Nancy Wirtz. She always does a great job. And Gary Lynn Floyd and our CSL music team for the wonderful music supporting the message today. Today we begin our month of exploring living from a higher vibration. It's a great beginning with Easter being today. And our message, now what? The best answer to that question is choosing to live from a higher vibration by embracing the Christ within and moving from limitation to possibilities. And so that's our message for the day. I know it's not always easy, but the real you, the one we talked about last week, is a living, breathing Christ. So today, I invite you to embrace that you. You might be wondering how to embrace that Christ within and how you might move from limitation to possibilities. And while you ponder that, allow me to give you a question for the week. What is the one choice you might make today to accept you are a miracle, to embrace a consciousness of joy, and to rise up and live your life fully with every bit of passion you can muster? One more time. What is the one choice you might make today to accept the miracle you are, to embrace a consciousness of joy, and to rise up and live your life fully with every bit of passion you can muster? Today is a day that people around the globe are celebrating Easter, which is a new spiritual year and the resurrection of Jesus the Christ. Poet Katie McCann wrote this: "The very first Easter taught us this, that life never ends and love never dies." There are numerous messages being delivered by ministers today, a large number of them about how Jesus saved us from our sins. That's not what I plan to discuss. My focus is one of the most powerful spiritual symbols in human history, the resurrection. From a science of mind perspective, Easter is not simply a historical event. It is a living spiritual principle. It's the eternal reminder that life cannot be buried, truth cannot be crucified, and love cannot be entombed. And in these times of uncertainty, I know I'm grateful for that reminder that truth cannot be crucified, nor can love be entombed. How about you? In our philosophy, we believe the Christ is the divine presence within every person. Easter reminds us that life, love, and truth can never be buried. They always rise again. And as we awaken to that truth, we discover our purpose. We express our joy, and we become living expressions of the divine. And there's something beautiful happening this time of year as well. This week happens to be Passover, the sacred Jewish celebration of liberation, the movement from bondage to freedom. Passover reminds us of the journey from limitation into possibilities and from oppression into awakening. Passover and Easter tell the same spiritual story, leaving behind the old self, crossing into freedom, rising into new life. The Israelites crossed the Red Sea. Jesus walked out of the tomb. Both are metaphors for the same spiritual awakening, the realization of the divine presence within us. We probably all know the crucifixion and resurrection story, yet I suspect that you know it from the traditional religious point of view. And today, I'm going to invite you to look at these two events from the view of Jesus the Christ. Ernest Holmes said, "The Christ is not a person, but a universal presence, a divine pattern within every human soul. And today's message is designed to help you embrace that Christ within you, because Easter is not just about what happened to Jesus. It's about what can happen within us. Easter celebrates resurrection, not just a miracle from the past, a principle of life. It's about how you can roll away your own stone that is keeping you from rising up to your highest self. Nature demonstrates resurrection every spring. Seeds buried in the soil rise again as flowers. Trees that appear dead burst back into bloom. You see, life never stops expressing itself. Lao Tzu wrote this: "Life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Do not resist them. That only creates sorrow." And Science of Mind teaches that life is forever unfolding, forever expressing, forever rising. And Easter reminds us the divine life within us is always rising. I want to repeat that. Easter reminds us the divine life within us is always rising. Yes, that same creative power that lived in Jesus lives within us. Yet one of the greatest challenges we face is forgetting that we ourselves are miracles. We often admire the greatness in others, but overlook our own greatness. Jesus was able to see his own greatness and live it, and thus he was able to overcome limitations. Ernest Holmes, our founding father, wrote this: "You are a center of God in the universe, and you can begin to recognize your divine inheritance." Think about that. The same intelligence that spins galaxies, that forms oceans, that creates life itself, is expressing through you. That alone is miraculous. Unfortunately, many of us have been trained to believe the opposite. We're taught we're flawed, we're broken, we're unworthy. Or we grew up hearing we've sinned and Jesus had to come and die on the cross to save us. So not true. A Course in Miracles reminds us, God created you as part of him. Nothing can exist apart from him, which means you actually cannot be separate from divine life. I say all the time, there is no spot where God is not. Think about that. Nothing can exist apart from the God who created you, which tells you the Christ within you is not something you earn, it's something you learn to recognize. Christian Sorensen said this: "You are not becoming spiritual. You are awakening to the spirituality that has always been present." That realization alone could change everything. You know, sometimes we forget how miraculous we are. A man once prayed, "God, why did you make me so ordinary?" And God replied, "I didn't. You just haven't opened the instruction manual yet." Okay, so we didn't come with instruction manuals, and yet this Science of Mind philosophy has become my instruction manual for learning to embrace that Christ within me and living from a higher vibration. Our instruction manual is about recognizing our oneness with God, recognizing the miracle that each of us are. So let's take a look at a spiritual practice that might help us remember that we are a miracle. I call it the miracle mirror. Each morning, look into a mirror and say, "I am a unique expression of the divine. Life is unfolding through me." It may feel strange at first, Yet truth repeated becomes belief. Commit to doing this practice for 1 week and see if your inner self doesn't change, maybe just a wee bit. And for us to embrace our Christ within and accept we are indeed a miracle, the next step is choosing joy on this Easter day and every day. Y'all all know I'm all about joy. And joy is a central part of Christ consciousness. It's one of the highest vibrations emitted. Yet many people struggle to experience it consistently. Joy is not the absence of problems. It's a state of consciousness. You've heard me quote this from the Dalai Lama. Happiness is not something ready-made. It comes from your own actions. Joy is not something we chase. It's something we allow. Joy arises from how we choose to see life. Ernest Holmes said, life is meant to be lived joyfully. Joy arises when we align with the flow of life rather than resist it. Let me repeat that. Joy arises when we align with the flow of life rather than resist it. And I repeated it because I know that very often I resist that flow of life. And when we resist life, we create tension. When we trust life, we create an openness. And that's why children often experience so much joy. They're still flowing with life. Some might say they haven't forgotten the miracle that they are. And did you know that gratitude literally rewires the brain toward joy? Okay, so you knew that I had to get gratitude into this service somewhere. It's true. There is scientific evidence that when we focus on what is working rather than what is lacking, we activate neural pathways that increase feelings of well-being. That's why gratitude practices are so powerful. The Buddha said, wear gratitude like a cloak, and it will feed every corner of your life. So embrace gratitude. Rewire your brain to more joy. And the Buddha also taught us what we think, we become. Science of mind calls this the law of mind in action. We believe that our thoughts shape our experience. When we dwell in fear, we experience limitation. When we dwell in gratitude, we experience expansion. And when we dwell in joy, we experience more joy. Jonathan Parker told us, joy is a natural expression of the soul when we allow life to flow freely through us. Wow. Joy is the natural expression of the soul when we allow life to flow freely through us. So are you allowing life to flow in you? There's a story about 3 stonecutters, and a traveler came upon them. They were all working beside a dusty road, and each man was hammering away at a large block of stone. And so curious, a traveler asked the first man, "What are you doing?" The man barely looked up, and he gruffly said, "I'm cutting stones. It's hard work, and it's hot, and honestly, I'd rather be somewhere else." The traveler nodded and walked a little further down the road, and he asked the second stonecutter the same question, "What are you doing?" The second man wiped the sweat from his forehead, and he replied, "Well, I'm earning a living for my family. This job puts food on my table." The traveler continued down the road and came to the third stonecutter. The man was working just as hard as the others, but there was a lightness about him. The traveler asked again, "What are you doing?" And the man stopped, he smiled, and he said, "I'm building a cathedral." All 3 men were doing exactly the same work. One saw struggle, one saw survival, and one saw purpose, beauty, and possibility. Only one understood the greater purpose of the work. And which stonecutter do you think had the most joy in his life? Which one was allowing life to flow freely through him? I'm sure you know it was that third one. The one who saw the fruit of his labors was going to be a beautiful cathedral. So quit postponing joy. Quit saying, I'll be happy when I retire, when things calm down, when I succeed. Joy only exists in the present moment. And when we are fully present in life, joy naturally appears. Easter reminds us to remember something important. We're not merely going through the motions of life. We're not just earning a living. We're participating in the creation of something sacred. Take that in. You're participating in the creation of something sacred. Every act of kindness, every moment of courage, every expression of love is a stone placed in the cathedral of humanity. And the Christ within us is the master builder. As Lao Tzu said, if you are depressed, you're living in the past. If you're anxious, you're living in the future. If you are at peace, you're living in the present. Joy lives in the present and in the presence of that Christ within each of us. So let's look at a spiritual practice which might help us expect more joy in our life. I call it joy inventory. Every evening, write down 3 moments of joy from your day. Even the small ones count. A smile, a sunset, a kind conversation. You're training your mind to see joy. Joy grows where attention goes. The Christ within us is creative, and joy grows through creative expression. Whenever we express creativity through art or music or ideas, even through generosity and innovation, we experience the joy of being aligned with life. My Dean, Catherine Economou, used to say, life is always inviting us into greater expression. Have you noticed in your life that joy often appears when we say yes to expression or when we say yes to our higher vibrations? So let me expand a little bit on that spiritual practice for joy. I call this one a spiritual practice for joy. Each morning, ask yourself, what would joy look like today? And then set the intention to notice it. In the middle of the day, pause for a minute and appreciate something around you. And then in the evening, write down those 3 moments from the day, remembering that even the small ones count. And over time, you are training your mind to see joy, because joy does grow where attention goes. Easter is the ultimate symbol of rising, yet resurrection is not meant to be symbolic and dead. It's meant to be lived. The Christ within you is not timid. It's creative and adventurous and alive. Jesus said in the Bible in John 10:10, I came that they might have life and have it more abundantly. He didn't say he came so we could have a little life. He said abundant life. The question is not whether life is ready for us. The question is, are we ready for life? Okay, so sometimes we hold back. We wait until we feel ready or possibly until we feel safe. And let me tell you, passion doesn't come after we begin living. It awakens when we begin living. So on this Easter Sunday, I want you to consider, What stone do you need to roll away so you can truly begin living fully? Living a life of joy and passion and purpose. Yes, Easter asks us a simple but powerful question. Will we keep living inside the tomb of our old beliefs? Or will we step into the life that is waiting for us? Are you going to keep living inside the tomb of your old beliefs, or are you going to step into the life that's waiting for you? A farmer owned a large piece of land that had been untouched for years. Everyone assumed that the soil was poor because nothing had grown there for decades. And then one spring, a young farmer came by and bought the land. He tilled the soil, planted seeds, watered faithfully, and soon crops grew abundantly. One of his neighbors came over and said, "How did you make the land fertile?" And he just said, "The land was always fertile. It just needed someone who believed in it." Sometimes our lives are the same way. The potential for abundance already exists within us. Sometimes we simply need to believe in that field of possibility within ourselves. So where might you not be living fully? And what fertile soil within you have you been allowing to lay barren? Here's a spiritual practice that might help with that. I call it passion activation. Ask yourself one question this week. What would I do if I trusted life completely? Or maybe you like this one. Where might I believe in myself so as to live fully? And then take one small step in that direction. Today, we want to affirm that that same divine presence that lived and expressed through Jesus lives within each of us. We believe the Christ is not limited to one person, but is a universal spiritual truth, the divine nature present in every human soul. Easter reminds us that life is eternal. Love is unstoppable, and the spirit within us can always rise beyond fear, beyond limitation, and beyond doubt. And as we awaken to the truth, we discover that we are each unique expressions of God, and we're here to live with joy and compassion and creativity and purpose. In this philosophy, we believe that aligning our thoughts with love, gratitude, and possibility allows the Christ consciousness within us to express more fully in our lives and in the world. So, as I begin to close, let's take a look at Easter. Not the resurrection of a single moment in history, rather a three-tiered resurrection that can happen within us. The first is the resurrection of hope. Sometimes the first thing that needs to rise again is hope. Admittedly, there are times when life can wear us down. Disappointments happen, our plans fall apart, dreams seem to get delayed. And often in those moments, something inside of us might whisper, maybe nothing is ever going to change. But hope is the seed of transformation. The Buddha taught, no matter how hard the past, you can always begin anew. Hope is the moment when we begin to believe that life still holds possibilities for us, not just limitations. Even the smallest spark of hope can begin to transform our outlook. That's why Easter begins in the darkness, in the quiet of the tomb, because hope often begins before anything has visibly changed. Hope is the first resurrection, and once hope begins to rise, something else follows. Joy. Joy is the second resurrection. Not superficial happiness, a deeper joy, a realization that life is still unfolding through us. In John 15:11, Jesus said this, "These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may remain in you, and that your joy may be full. Notice the power in those words. Jesus didn't say joy comes from circumstances. He said joy remains in you. And as I said earlier, joy is not something we create, it's something we allow. And Ernest Holmes even reminded us, the nature of spirit is joy. When we align with spirit, when we embrace the Christ within, joy begins to rise naturally within us. And then the third resurrection occurs, purpose. Purpose calls us forward. There comes a moment when we realize we are not simply here to survive life. We're here to participate in it fully, to create, to love, to contribute, to share our gifts. That's where passion enters the picture. And I quoted Reverend Catherine Economo earlier. Life is always inviting us into greater expression. Each of us has something unique to offer the world. When we allow the Christ within us to express through our compassion, through our creativity and courage and generosity, purpose begins to rise. And you know what? Life suddenly feels more alive. And let me remind you how this sacred season of new spiritual beginnings this year brings two sacred traditions together, Passover and Easter. Passover creates liberation. Easter creates resurrection. Passover tells the story of people walking out of slavery into freedom. And Easter tells the story of life rising from what appeared to be death. But spiritually, both stories are pointing to the same inner transformation. A Course in Miracles beautifully says, the resurrection is a symbol of the sharing of joy. There comes a moment in every life when we must leave something behind. A belief that's limited us, a fear that's held us back, a story about ourselves that's no longer true. All of those invite us to cross a threshold, to move from fear into freedom, to move from limitation to possibility, and to move from the old self into a new awareness that embraces the Christ within and becomes our new self. And when we cross that threshold, something extraordinary happens. We cross an inner Red Sea, and we roll away an inner stone. And the light that's always been within us begins to rise. As you heard in today's meditation, Jesus said, the kingdom of God is within you. And Ernest Holmes taught, the Christ is the divine idea of humanity, the pattern of perfection within every person. Which means the resurrection is not something we remember, it's something we allow. Every time we choose love over fear, and every time we choose courage over doubt, and every time we choose to live more fully, the Christ within us rises again. And perhaps that's the deepest message of Easter. The stone was never meant to stay in place. The tomb was never meant to be permanent. Life was always meant to rise. And that life is rising in you today on this Easter day. In resurrection, first hope rises, then joy awakens, and finally purpose calls us forward. And when hope, joy, and purpose come alive within us, something extraordinary happens. We begin living not as spectators of life, but as participants in the miracle of life itself. We recognize the miracle we are and believe in the fertileness of the life within us. And that's what it truly means to embrace the Christ within and to rise up to our highest level of vibration. So now what? Now, the Christ within us is life itself, always rising. So in summary, how might you truly answer the question, now what? Well, accept the miracle you are. Embrace the Christ within you fully and rise up. Remember, nothing exists apart from God. There is no spot where God is not. And embrace a consciousness of joy. No joy arises from how we choose to see life. Be the stonecutter who was building a cathedral. Rise up and live fully with passion. Be ready for life. Till that fertile soil that is within you. And welcome the three resurrections of hope, joy, and passion. Roll away your stone of limitation and live fully. So here's your affirmation for the week. How is it I so willingly, energetically, and effortlessly accept the miracle I am, embrace a consciousness of joy, and rise up and live my life fully with every bit of passion I can muster? And your challenge? Take some time every day this week to ask yourself, what would joy look like today? Choose to rise up with hope, joy, and purpose. And commit to using some of those spiritual practices that help you remember the miracle that you are and all the joy that you can bring into your life. So let's pray. We pause, we take a breath, we return within. We leave this time together recognizing the divine presence, that infinite life, the same spirit that moved through the great teachers of humanity that lives within me and within each of us right here and right now. I celebrate the miracle of life expressing itself through me and through every person hearing this prayer. And I remember I am not separate from the divine. I am an expression of it. So I choose hope and I choose joy and I choose to live with passion and purpose. And as that is true for me, it is true for each of us. I know that each person heard something in this time we spent together on this Easter day, which is moving them into embracing the Christ within and letting go of limitations for all the possibilities available. Like the stone rolling away from the tomb, every limitation falls away from our awareness, so each of us can rise into a new vision of ourselves and walk forward in faith and love and gratitude. I know the greatest truth that Easter reveals is that I am rising to my highest self, and I am never alone. The divine presence lives within me and walks beside me always. I know the resurrection is not a story of the past. It is the living truth of spirit rising within each of us today. I see each of us being the embodiment of divine love, that love which guides our steps with wisdom and fills our days with gentleness and vision. And I see us each rooted in peace and lifted by love, choosing today to embrace the Christ within and to participate in those three resurrections of hope, joy, and purpose, knowing all that we are and all that we might become is love. So may the tapestry of our lives continue to unfold in beauty, purpose, and love, and may we each shine our light right now. I am absolutely so grateful for every person who chose to spend some time with us today. Grateful we can go forth with an open heart, and trust the life within us and accept the miracle we are, embracing a consciousness of joy and rising up and living our lives fully with every bit of passion we can muster. So it's from gratitude and with joy, bliss, and blessings that I release this word into the resurrection of life within us now, trusting that this word is released into the law. The yes has been said, so I let it be, knowing it is done, it is complete, it is fulfilled, so I can say amen, and we can affirm it together. And so it is. And I want to thank everyone who continues to support our community. I'm hoping on this Easter Sunday that you might consider an extra donation as a special Easter gift to this community. And I'm so grateful for the new computer and the software that we're paying for that is making my life a lot easier. So thank you very much for that. Enjoy our offertory song.